All right. Thanks everyone for coming. And everyone was very dutiful and sitting down for the 7:15 start, so thank you for that. My name is Glenn Morangelo, and I'm the development director and one of the founders of the Missoula Butterfly House and Insectarium. And we hope that you're all enjoying winter, as we're saying this year. And I hope that you enjoyed the Valentine's Day weekend, because even though Valentine's Day has come and gone, love is still in the air tonight, as we're going to hear all about the amorous adventures of insects from Sophie Fitzgerald. But before we dive into talking about bug sex, the part that most of you know what's coming if you're new and haven't been here before, it's the time for insect jokes. And I'm really scraping the bottom of the barrel with some of these, so hopefully this will go away. All right. What do you call an ant who fights crime? A vigilante. I got two ant ones this evening. So why was the ant so confused? Because all of his uncles were ants. I know, yeah, they don't get any better than that, so there's only one more. Did you hear about the new band whose members are all bed bugs? They're great, but they only play covers. All right. Now you know a little bit more about me. As the one who tends to introduce Bugs and Brews speakers each month, I usually try to think of kind of a creative lead-in to thank our beverage sponsors, DraftWorks. And for this month, my creativity was kind of tanked. But in case you're not aware, DraftWorks has put the brews into Bugs and Brews since we started this lecture series back in 2015. And so we are incredibly grateful for their long time and generous support and enthusiasm for our mission. You might even say we love DraftWorks, so I'm bringing it back in. So back in the day, so this is all going to tie in. I was telling Sophie about this before. Back in the day, there may have been some times where I frequented some bars when I was younger and would be out to certain hours of the evening. But honestly, those days have come and gone. And if I'm going to go out for a beer, DraftWorks is really my go-to, because I'm just going to give them a pitch because they're such a great sponsors. But I love going there because, number one, they've got a great selection of beers, great staff, great atmosphere, especially in the summer. They've got that outdoor patio, and a great variety of events, trivia, and music. And so if anybody is a fan of Tom Catmull, which I am, he's going to be there on Thursday night, so I hope you'll join me in going to DraftWorks. But I always mean to mention this, and if I don't, it's an oversight. But if you go to DraftWorks, you grab a beer, please tell your server that you really appreciate their support of Bugs and Brews, because they've done so much for us for a long time. I also want to give a shout to our friends at Missoula Community Access Television who are recording tonight's lecture, and we're thrilled to be working with them as part of a media assistance grant donated to the Missoula Butterfly House and Insectarium. And I checked this afternoon, and so last month's lecture is already up on the MCAT YouTube page. So if you go to their YouTube page and just search for Missoula Butterfly House, you'll find just about every lecture that we've had over the last 2 years, because I believe we've done this for about 2 seasons or so. So thanks, MCAT. Now to introduce our speaker, for those of you that still might think that bugs are creepy, maybe even a little dirty, tonight we're really going to get down and dirty. Sophie Fitzgerald, a doctoral student in the Emlyn Lab at the University of Montana, is going to walk us through some of the weird ways that insects reproduce, informed by the latest evolutionary biology and animal behavioral research. And when I hinted before that my days of hanging out in the bars until all hours of the night are long, long gone, I saw pictures from Sophie's last field trip that she took to Japan, where her and her crew were up the entire night, just about every night, looking for the beetles that are very nocturnal that they were studying. So, and that's a whole other story. But it was pretty amazing, and I was actually kind of jealous because it looked like a lot of fun. Sophie's PhD work is focused on animal communication and sexual selection. Specifically, she seeks to understand the respective influences of female mate choice and male-male competition on the reproductive success of Japanese rhinoceros beetles. She's also passionate about diversity and equity in STEM and mentoring students who are interested in becoming socially conscious field biologists. So with that, a warm Buds and Brews welcome to Sophie Fitzgerald.
Hello. Okay, is this too quiet in the back? Okay, because I don't use lapel microphones that often. Maybe this. Is that a good volume? Before, you liked better. Okay, thank you. All right. This is very exciting because one of my goals before I defended was to give a Bugs and Brews lecture. So thank you, Glenn, for that really nice introduction and also for inviting me to speak. And this is, like he mentioned, a different talk than what I normally give. But I do have to read about and watch a lot of bug sex for my job, and so I feel qualified maybe to give this talk today. Please bear with me with some tech stuff. So I have two computers. Those are best way to troubleshoot. We'll see how video, audio goes, so we'll all work through it together. Like Glenn mentioned, I am a PhD candidate in ecology and evolution program at the University of Montana, and I'm hopefully going to defend within the year. And my work focuses on Japanese rhinoceros beetles, and they will make an appearance soon. And so I am interested in studying the evolution of animal mating systems, and I'm obsessed with the ornate traits that are involved with mating. And so I'm approaching this topic of insect sex from the lens of a behavioral ecologist. So I'm really interested in the weird things the animals do and why. And so I work with Doug Emlin, who's a researcher at the university, who I like to joke has a shrine here at in the exhibition hall. I love it. It's really cute. And Doug has spent his career investigating the evolutionary underpinnings of huge animal weapons. So why they evolve, what is their purpose, how do they achieve such extreme sizes? And he chose to ask these questions in species that these weapons reach the largest of extremes, the insects. And you might think that deer and elk have large weapons, but the biggest deer antlers only constitute up to 5% of the male's body weight. And in this species of rhinoceros beetle, the horn constitutes up to 1/3 of the body weight. So serious investment going on in insect weapons. So the largest weapons are not that evolve in animals, are not for defense or for attacking prey, but they are simply used against rivals of the same species and often the same sex, principally in competition over access to mates. So there you go. That's your first bug sex vignette of the night. Animal weapons. Biggest weapons in animals are typically used for same-sex competition over access to mates. And Charles Darwin was also interested in similar traits. He is the first academic credited with formulating evolutionary theory, and you probably know his magnum opus on the origin of species, where he postulated natural selection, or survival of the fittest. And his second most famous book was called The Descent of Man, published in 1871. And there he proposed a second potent evolutionary force called sexual selection, which arises purely from a means of attracting mates. And he has a lot of really good, quippy 19th century quotes, and I really like this one. This is maybe not the quippiest one, but I love it. So, courage, poignancy, perseverance, strength in the size of body, weapons of all kinds, musical organs, both vocal and instrumental, bright colors, ornamental appendages, have all been indirectly gained by one sex or the other through the exertion of choice, the influence of love and jealousy, and an appreciation for the beautiful. He also has this quote that I love, which is, "Oh my God, how I do hate species and varieties," which if you are a scientist in this room, me too sometimes. And Darwin loathed sexually selected traits because they appeared completely at odds with survival. He has another quote about how a peacock's tail feather makes him feel sick. And he was principally concerned with traits that assist survival, so that are under natural selection. But we are still publishing papers to this day, more than 150 years later, on defining sexual selection, so expanding on Darwin's original explanation. So the more we discover, the more definitions must shift to encompass examples that may violate the categories that they were originally made for. And a huge portion of research that has greatly pushed that definition of sexual selection and sex, and the sexes generally, has come from insects and spiders. For the purpose of this talk, spiders is bugs, and there will be a lot of spiders in this talk. So insects are so bizarre, and everything they do seems to violate what we think is normal, especially when it comes to sex. So I wanted to showcase a bunch of examples that I think are the most compelling, and the really strange things that they do that I find just mind-blowing. I hope that you laugh. I mean, we can't have a talk like this where people don't laugh. It's funny. But I also hope that you can see that a lot of these examples do move science forward. They're not just for laughs. They are pretty funny. And maybe you'll leave this talk and just go, huh, that was weird. And there's no way this could be a comprehensive list, so I did just have to pick some of my favorites. But there are 1 million species of insects, and they all mate differently. So we couldn't get through that list in this talk. All right, to start, we're going to start with scientists' obsession with insect penises. A lot of the illustrations that I'm using in this are like real hand-drawn figures from papers that I really love too. So just one where the fly is like, I love it. Okay, so in nearly every pinned insect collection that you can find, especially the ones that are in museums, you'll find a tiny little structure pinned next to them, and those are the penises. And I mentioned there's over 1 million species of insect, maybe way more. How do we even know that? And one way to tell is their genitalia. This is pictures from, there's a journal called the Coleoptera Society. This is just straight from their Instagram. All the papers published in like the last year. It's pretty much mandatory to publish the genitalia in these papers. So genitalia are among, if not the fastest evolving structure of animals. So sometimes the only way to differentiate species is by looking at their reproductive organs. So here are 8 different species of Drosophila penises. So Drosophila are the annoying little fruit flies that fly around. They also might be maybe the species we know the most about in the world. And many of the species look really, really similar, but they have very different reproductive tracts. And there's 1,600 species of known Drosophila. It can be really hard to tell species apart because they have different levels of variation. And here I'm showing you a bunch of different colors from all the same species. So this is the Asian lady beetle. Every single one of the colors here is all the same species. However, next to it, maybe similar amounts of color variation, but these are 8 different species of moss-inhabiting flea beetle, recently described in December 2025. Obviously, genitalia can be really helpful for understanding species relationships. We now have DNA as well, so that's very important. And scientists have become obsessed with looking at genitalia because we're obsessed with how many species really are there. Through this work, we have found some of the strangest structures ever evolved. So this is the dragonfly penis, and then also the bean beetle penis. Some insect penises are also called adiaguses. That's the scientific euphemism. And they have all of these protrusions coming off of them. It's because males of the species will scoop out the sperm of the male that has previously mated in both of these species. So all of these little accoutrements enhance paternity. And so they keep on evolving. When you look at these structures, though, it does make you wonder, what do the vaginas look like? So now we're getting into that. So this is a study that I really love. This is stained images of a handful of species of butterflies and moths. These are male reproductive organs. This doesn't even look like a male reproductive organ, but it is. It's very interesting. And this study was principally concerned with what drives this variation. And so they also looked at female reproductive tracts. And you can see there's an equal amount of insane variation in female butterfly and moth vaginas that are likely driving this diversity in male genitalia that we see. I also think these pictures are beautiful. So when I was putting together this part of this talk, I guess, I found maybe one of my favorite studies of all time. And I wanted to share the really diligent work of this researcher, Dr. Yoshitaka Kamimura. He is a researcher in Japan who is a earwig systemicist. So he describes species of earwigs. He has put together tons of species relationships with earwigs, and the pioneering efforts of his work, we've now identified over 2,000 species of earwigs. So earwigs are already really captivating to researchers, especially behavioral ecologists. They have huge forceps at the end of their abdomens, and males will use these forceps to fight with each other. So I have found a good PBS video of earwig fighting. So these are two males fighting. So they already have huge elaborate weapons, which we addressed as to fight rivals over access to resources, sometimes mates. Also, in all 2,000 species of earwigs, this is a little bit of a tangent, there's evidence of parental care, and I think that is interesting. It's not necessarily directly related to bug sex adjacent, but I think that's really interesting. So when earwigs mate, males perform lengthy courtship, and then the female, when she's ready to accept, will twist her abdomen up, and then the male will insert his penis. And in this researcher's pursuit of identifying earwig species, he discovered that there are several species of earwigs that have two penises. And so this is from a paper that he wrote where we have our earwigs in copula. The female is twisting and the male is inserting one of the penises, highlighted in red. And when he found out that there were two penises, he asked a really obvious question, I think, which is, do earwig females have two vaginas? So after careful dissecting and imaging, no, they do not. There's only one. So then he asked, of course, the next best question, are they right penis or left penis? And this is actually like one of my favorite. I was reading like science papers about this. It's amazing. So are they right penis or left penis? And so he performs, again, really diligent experiments. He has males with females, and he assesses whether they're using their right penis or their left penis. And he finds that in some species, it's like 80-20. So like 80% of individuals use their right penis over their left. And of course, he goes back, he goes, let's look again. In this case, the way that the female positions means that males that use their right penis achieve more paternity. And so they are incentivized to use the right side. So it has to do with the female positioning and the female reproductive tract. Okay, cool. He went to another species. That species is 50-50. Just totally doesn't matter. And when you if you study the same male and you follow it through time, it will use the same one over time. So his true scientific conclusion is that practice makes you better. And they just find one and you stick with it. And I find that, and also he cut them off. That's another thing. He said, well, is the other one functional? And yes, it is. Yeah, he did that too. And he was awarded an Ig Nobel Prize for this work, which is a magazine that awards scientists for work where you go, cool, I guess. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that story was like incredible. Interestingly enough, this is the same researcher who was on this team that discovered that there are female penises in a species of bark lice or a genus of bark lice, the Neotrogla, that live in caves in Brazil. So in this case, females actually insert an organ into males to get their sperm. And I mean, this man covers all the bases. I think he's great. Yeah? Okay. That was a lengthy segment on. Oh, on the, for these, because it has eggs, so it has ovaries on the inside. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And in this case, the males have a sperm pouch, and the female goes in and digs it. Good question. And I like that. If you guys have other questions, feel free to ask me.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah?
Okay, on that slide,
Yeah.
you had all the penises and all the vaginas.
Oh, yes, on the butterflies.
How do they fit together? What do they?
That actually, I don't know. Yeah. I haven't seen that myself. We can watch a video later. I think that it's all internal also. The reason I say that is because a lot of those tissues were soft and stained, not like the exoskeleton pieces of the so I think it's an internal thing. It is cool though, right? They look like insane shapes. Good question. We're abandoning bug penises for now. We're moving on into more behaviorally oriented territory. Okay, thanks for bearing with my 2-monitor situation. We're gonna watch that in 1 second, once I get the slides organized. Okay, so backing up. Before we can even get to copulation, insect courtship. So how do you attract a mate? This could also be its own full talk, but I was really intrigued by the earwig story, and so we had to include that. And it was really, really difficult for me to figure out what to put into this section. So if you guys have, again, more questions on stuff that didn't make it in this, I would love to chat more, but I'm going to show some of my favorite examples of insect courtship, the stuff that really, I think, just blows my mind. So to start off, this might be a very classic example, but if you haven't seen it, these are peacock spiders. Again, spider is bug for today. And they are really charismatic. They're fantastically cute. They are smaller than your pinky nail. And so they're quite small spiders. And they have maybe one of the most ostentatious, showy courtship displays of any species alive. The males have an abdomen that fans out. It's brightly colored. They raise their arms, they wiggle around, they tap on the ground, and all to avoid, keeping the female's attention so that she doesn't eat him. So a lot of spiders. We'll get into that too. And there is a reason that this is one of the most filmed arthropods when it comes to courtship novelty. So just again, almost a captivating, mesmerizing courtship display in order to keep the attention of the female and impress her. So the next example is probably familiar, and I forgot to have this start automatically. But I don't think that crickets should be taken for granted. So male crickets sing by rubbing their wings together, and you can see that there's the crunchy bits on the wings. They're specialized structures that rub together to make sound and then deflect sound, and that's why they're so loud. The reason I think this is really impressive is because so for example, in the peacock spiders, they're drumming a song onto the ground. That is felt through the ground by the female. Crickets project song through the air, which means that there has to be an organ that evolves for the receiver to actually pick up on that information. And so this is one of the examples that I think is really cool about how courtship generates evolutionary novelty, especially when it comes to sensory systems. So this is a really simple ear. You have to be able to hear airwaves moving. So crickets have evolved an ear. It is a very thin membrane. It is on their legs, so it's not anywhere near their head. And if we were outside in maybe like a warmer climate in the summer, let's see if this, maybe you can hear that. Is that playing in the back? So there's about Take my word. That is a chorus of insects, if you can't hear it very well. And this is the only sound that we have in the talk. So, chorus of insects singing at night. And there's about 3 to 4 different species of insects singing during that call. And then also that male bullfrog that was just going burr, burr, burr. That is a loud night, and we can all hear all of those things. However, in a cricket, they can only hear just one. So in this case, they evolve organs that are only stimulated when the appropriate frequency is emitted. So that is how insects that hear filter out all the unnecessary noise and just locate their compatible mate. I think crickets are neat. So other incredible organs have evolved as well. We have, like weapons, ornaments have also evolved, so just whole protrusions coming off your body. It's not good to grow a leg where a leg doesn't belong, or an arm where an arm doesn't belong. But in many species, they do, and it does belong. It garners them fitness. And so these are tree hoppers that have really, really beautiful and diverse structures that come off. And you can see in tree hoppers, both males and females both possess those structures. These kinds of things develop just the way that a limb would develop. So in insects, if they're growing a leg, they're also growing a version of a leg off of their head. Very interesting. And the fireflies have also evolved whole organs that produce light, and every single species has a different light pattern that they are attuned to find each other. So courtship can generate all kinds of novelty. Okay, so this example for courtship is not super widely known, but it's something that I find near and dear to my heart. I just love this species. And I was able to meet this researcher a few years ago. Her name is Hiromi Mukai, and she works at like an agricultural station in Japan. And she was on a trip to Okinawa, and she found the Okinawa jewel beetle, and she saw that they have a very interesting courtship display. It's very complex for an insect, and she documented it in this really elegant study, and I love to show it. So these are jewel bugs. They're a type of shield bug. So think like stink bug. Very shiny and colorful, but then they also have, just the coolest mating display. So these are videos from one of her papers. So they perform a duet, a very complicated duet. So these are both the male and the female. They are drumming to each other and perceiving whatever messages they're sending through the leaf to one another. So this is phase 1 of the duet. Phase 2, there were a series of reciprocal headstands on one another. And I just, even though it's slow, I think it's really amazing. It's so cool. And then they intonate wildly, passionately. It's amazing. Could you imagine seeing this just like on a leaf in the forest? That'd be so sick. Phase 3, the male begins to drum vigorously, tapping vigorously. And then once receptivity has been agreed upon, this is where copulation begins. So this is the charismatic and very complex courtship of the jewel bug. And I really love this story, this example, because this is an example of mutual mate choice. So sorry, forgive my distraction with the 2 screens. So in sexual selection history, there's been a lot of emphasis on female choice being a driver of complexity of male courtship displays. More and more when we're finding examples of mutual mate choice that constitutes and creates these really elaborate mating displays, we're able to expand what we think are the driving forces behind some of these evolutionary displays. And I think that, sorry, I'm speaking from the heart. But I just really like this example, and I think that more often than not, courtship is actually a conversation between individuals, not so much of like the male does one thing to attract the attention of the female. And I think work like this is really pushing the limits on what we know about how courtship displays evolve. I'm so glad that you guys are engaged with this and laughing. I was like making this earlier and I was like, what am I even gonna say? So, nuptial gifts. In many species, you have to fight. You have to perform a crazy courtship display. And then you still have to make dinner for your partner. And then some species avoid that, like dragonflies and robber flies. Well, they will bring a prey item, they'll wrap it up, and they'll give it to a potential mate. But the most extreme versions of this are when males create something from their own bodies to give to a female. So in several species, males produce these globular, giant substances that have sperm in them, but also a lot of other things. Lipids and fats and proteins. And they're called nuptial gifts, nuptial, getting married, you know. And they can be really large. So in some species, this can constitute up to a third of the male's body weight. I mean, that's like a lot to make for a single mating event. And females will bend over and just consume this, just they eat it with their mouths. So they digest it directly as food. And this is a big effort from males, so you can't do this multiple times in a row often when it gets to be that big. And it benefits males, though, because the longer that a female is able to sit and enjoy her, snack, the more sperm is able to be transferred to inside of the female. So there are positives for males being able to make this. So in this case, this is very limiting for a male to make, and so in many species, females fight really aggressively over access to males because they are the limiting nutrient, or limiting resource, I should say. In bush crickets, it totally depends on who fights. So if things in the environment change, let's say food is really abundant, then males will fight over access to females. But when food is very scarce, it switches, and females fight really aggressively over access to males because of the nuptial gift. So it's not always made from seminal fluids or something produced from the testes. So in this case, this is the sagebrush cricket. The female is positioned on top in this arrangement, and she is eating the male's wings, just right off the back of the male while she's mating. And when they strike a vein, they just drink the blood, or bug blood, the hemolymph. So females get a lot out of doing this. This is in the sagebrush cricket. You think this is bad, but these males have it good because it can get worse. And so in the most extreme cases, females eat the males. So in all of the things I just showed you, the males live, so good for them. But in sexual cannibalism, the males get eaten. So evolutionary theory predicts that sexual cannibalism evolves when males and females are really different sizes. And so in all of the examples that we find, we see that females really outsize males. These are some examples that you may be familiar with. So praying mantises, when they rip the heads off of their mating male. And redback spiders, or in this case, the giant golden ore weaver, where the female outweighs the male 1 to 125 times. They get eaten a lot of the time.
So does the male always going to get attention now?
Yes, and actually, this is something you may not know if you did know this. There's super varying degrees of sexual cannibalism in these species. So I think we present these facts a lot of the time as like, oh, the praying mantis rips the head off of the male, but most of the time they don't. And so it depends on the species. And males evolve really complex sneaking strategies. So if the female is feeding, that's a really good way for the male to approach and survive. And in closely related species, so there's another species of golden ore weaver that is the sister species to this. this spider, females almost never strike. So it just completely depends on the species, which is why I really love this example. So the dark fishing spider is a situation where sexual cannibalism happens 100% of the time. So as evolutionary theory predicts, females are way bigger than males. They outweigh males 14 to 1. And there were some researchers who, I really enjoy this story too. So Dr. Schwartz and Dr. Hebetz, so Eileen Hebetz, they work out of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and they are really concerned about, their primary interests are why do males evolve monogamy? So functionally, if you get eaten 100% of the time, you only mate once. And so males of this species are monogamous and sexually cannibalized. So they have a lot of interesting questions around why does that evolve? And one of the ways that this evolves is because it is good for, perhaps it prevents females from mating again. So if a male, let me back up. Let me tell you how spiders mate. So spiders don't necessarily have a penis. They use pedipalps, so they're the little structures on the front of their mouths. And male spiders have a special organ that they can hold their sperm in and then insert it in the female and pass it off like it's their hand. In some instances, that pedipalp can break, and then the male can escape. And then functionally, the female cannot reproduce again. So they were like, okay, this could be good. Maybe it prevents males or females from having a second mating. Blah. They did a bunch of experiments, and they said, no, it doesn't. And when they were doing that work, they found out something really interesting, which is that males not only get eaten 100% of the time, they just die, like while they're mating. They just die in the middle of it. And then minutes later, females bend over and they eat the male, like within a couple minutes of mating. So they were like, wait, so they're sexually cannibalized 100% of the time, they're monogamous, they also just spontaneously die. And it turns out, because of their work, it does not affect female remating. So like, in what world is this good?
Wait, why do the males die?
They asked that question too. So I'm actually going to come back to that in like 5 seconds. So in the dark fishing spider, they found out that females will remate plentifully, like after they mate. And they were like, well, maybe it's really good for the offspring. That's another evolutionary reason that this could evolve. And they did an experiment where they, when females were eating their partner, they were like, we're going to prevent half of them from eating it. We're going to give them a cricket that's the same size. And then they looked at offspring. And they found out that in the females that were able to eat the male that had died that they mated with, their offspring were 20% larger and lived 60% longer. So it is an extreme advantage to be able to eat another spider instead of a different prey item. And I had some good conversations with my friend Bridger, who studies food web dynamics. And spiders are predators, so they're really enriched in nitrogen. And that's probably one of the main limiting resources in this species, so that could be one of the reasons, right? So what they're the molecules and isotopes that they're comprised of. Okay, so now to answer Logan's question, they were like, why do they die? So basically, spiders are 100% water. And in this species, males transfer 25% of their weight directly to the female while mating. While they're doing that, they just shrivel up and die. So these spiders die mechanistically by ejaculating themselves to death. That is how they die. And I think that this had to make it into the talk. It's crazy. I saw Eileen give this, like her research talk at a conference. It was 10 minutes, and I was like, I have to, like the 45-minute version, I need it. Okay. Thank you for letting me kind of ramble and share things that I just think are funny. And again, this is a little bit more off the cuff than what I normally give. You may be asking yourself, what can we learn from any of this? What can we learn from a spider that does that? But I don't think that you should, necessarily apply these things to humans. I just think that in particular is just a really clever, beneficial strategy for, making your offspring look good. No, it was difficult for me to write this talk because there are so many things to include, and also every single one of these vignettes is someone's career. So I wanted to choose a couple and highlight the researchers that are behind them. So behind every weird fact is a curious scientist who watches a lot of insects have sex. And our perception on animal mating systems has changed a lot since Darwin's time. And the reason that science can change and self-correct is because there's humanity in science. And as we develop new perspectives culturally, we can reanalyze these behaviors in a new light. And I think insects, maybe more than other animals, especially epitomize this disconnect because they're so alien and they're so foreign, but they still accomplish the same things. So insects force us to accept that there may not be one way of being, and they make us question what is natural. I'm very close to wrapping up, and I would love to take questions. Excuse me. I want to end with this quote from Dr. Marlene Zook, whose work I really love. She's a behavioral ecologist, and she was asked if insects experience pleasure the same way we do. And it's a great follow-up to a talk on bug sex. She says, I don't know why we have to have it one of two ways. Insects and other animals can be simultaneously not like little automatons or robots or whatever, but they can also be not like us. For instance, we don't expect animals to be physically like us. Kidneys are different in other animals. Insects have a really weird kidney called a Malpighian tube, and they don't look anything like a kidney, but they do the same function. And no one's in hysterics about why do they have such a different way of processing waste. So why do we think that emotions have to be the same in us as other animals? You can't look at an ant and say, that's like a person in an exoskeleton, because their brain is the size of a poppy seed. So they literally cannot be just like us. But they are showing you a way to be in the world that is completely different. And then when I read that quote to my dad last night, he was like, that's too many words. You should just say, the more that we learn about how insects perceive the world, the more our understanding of the world expands. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, can I take questions?
You always see dragonflies one on top of the other. Is that just hitching a ride, or are they?
Yes, no, that's a great question. Okay, so dragonflies have one of my favorite bug sex positions, and it is the mating wheel. And so in this case, we have the male on top, and he is clasping the female, who's bending the abdomen up to where the male will be able to, that's how they copulate. And then they stay in what's called tandem flight. So the male, it connects to the female, so the female is the one that's being grasped, and they fly around together. It's a form of mate guarding. So in order to make sure that the female does not remate with another individual, they stay connected. And that can happen while the female is still laying eggs too. So maybe you've ever seen dragonflies dropping their eggs into edges of water. And they're in pairs still, so that's tandem flight. That's a good question. Yeah. I'll go with you first. Thanks.
About more evolutionary theory. So sorry if this is too detailed. But,
No, please, I welcome it.
okay, perfect. Is there a relationship between the complexity of sexual reproductive organs and the turnover rate of a species. So for example, the Drosophilus example you gave, they speciate to focus on certain types of fruit. So is there like an evolutionary signal from like a meta-analysis or something that would suggest that that drives complexity?
Yeah. Yeah, no, so there's like two main, I'm gonna make sure I link it back to specifically that example of like ecological speciation. So where like they're using two different resources ecologically. But there's two main ideas, or three really, for why reproductive tracts evolve so rapidly. The first is that they could just be down the line genetically, like pleiotropically connected to other things that are changing. So if you change something like in a different area of the body, so whatever would be attracted to a new fruit or some other thing, that could just have a downstream effect on the shape of something. So one idea. The second idea is that lock and key. So if it is bad to mate with a different species, so hybridization is often not good for a lot of species, then you want to make sure that you physically can't do that if you may be in the same area where that's a risk, especially if it results in hybrid failure. So something like where they can't reproduce sterility or just overall not being able to develop. And last is just sexual selection. So if, for example, it becomes more advantageous to be the first one to mate, there may be some growth of the penis. Then the female may respond to have a way to like shunt sperm in a different direction or have a different pocket and try to not cognitively, but really like evolutionarily gain back some kind of way to balance the scales. And then that can just scale up. The more and more competition's happening on the sperm level, or whatever's happening behaviorally can just like cause all of that diversity. So I think it depends on the species. That's maybe not a satisfying answer, but. Thank you. Yeah.
What inspired you to go deeper with your research on bugs?
Oh, that's a good question. So when I started in science, I worked in a cricket lab, and like, of course, I never foresaw this as a career path. But I really think like the most interesting things that have evolved have to do with reproduction, and so I just kept getting more and more interested in like what is up with all this weird stuff. And this talk is really just for fun, and I appreciate you all being here and letting me kind of bumble my way through it. But I'm presenting on a lot of other people's research. But yeah, when I found Doug's work on rhino beetles, I just thought the animal weapons were really interesting. They're, again, these super extreme structures, and I don't know, I haven't stopped asking questions about it since. Thanks for asking. Yeah, Gina.
Do bugs ever have sex for fun? And also, does that have anything to do with same-sex bug evolution?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't think I can comfortably answer if they have it for fun or not. Kind of on my last little soapbox moment, I think it's really hard for us to understand what the emotions they're feeling. However, same-sex sexual behavior happens a lot in insects. And there are different adaptive ideas, so it's not always bad to just guess and try. But also, I don't know, I think that it doesn't have to be adaptive. But there are a lot of really interesting, so crickets, a lot of crickets have same-sex sexual behavior where the males will sing to each other and then they each try to give each other the spermatophore. and there are several other examples too. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, other Gina.
Are there any examples of females doing the courtship dance or courtship leading?
Yeah, so the mutual mate choice is some of the examples that come to mind off the top of my head. I wouldn't be surprised if there were. Unfortunately, just on the spot right now, I can't. And that's not to say that they don't. I just there has to be 1 million species. There's no way that there's not. So a lot of the kind of stuff describing the really behavioral details of a lot of the species just hasn't been done yet. I don't know. Maybe we can find some stuff later. Yeah.
So evolutionarily, like with the crickets,
Mhm.
if they drown out all their sound, wouldn't that be like a huge disadvantage for like predators, right? Like if they don't hear bullfrogs, wouldn't that be?
Totally. Yes. No, that's a really good question. So I think my short answer is they probably just use other senses. So crickets are pretty small and they feel a lot, and I think anything that's going to eat them is going to be bigger, and they probably can feel. I mean, they're really responsive even when you're hiking and stuff to just like hiding. It's really hard to find them when they're calling and you want to approach them. So my guess is that comes out in other ways of perceiving. But it can be really bad. I'm gonna plug one more vignette. There are instances where predators that are orienting to the sound are smaller, so parasites, and when parasites find calling insects, I mean that can be game over, and that's really tough because the call is necessary for sexual selection, for mating. So when you have this situation like being parasitized, which is naturally selected, and then being finding a mate, both are equally important to reproduction. And it can be limiting when the receiver, in this case for crickets, the female is hearing, like all of the males are gone. And then if they evolve a new type of song, the female still has to be able to hear it. So there's some interesting dynamics with like parasites and calling insects, yeah. Marlene Zook is a woman who does a lot of work on that. Yeah.
Do crickets only make the noise for like reproductive purposes?
Yes.
Or is it also?
No, they only make, so you mean like just when you go outside at night and you hear it?
Yeah, I mean, I found a cricket in my house once and it was making that noise and I was like,
Totally. Yes, yes. So crickets have two types of songs, long distance song, close range courtship song. And so when crickets call, they understand that there aren't, understand. They make it loud enough that there could be individuals far away. So they have a really loud call, that's the one that you just hear walking around at night. And then they have a way softer, quieter call that when they actually find a member of that they are interested in courting, they'll do a softer courtship song. Yeah. And then in fights, they don't really sing that much. Sometimes animals that have songs can like use a version of it, like an alarm call, to be aggressive with, but I'd say crickets is mostly reproduction. Yeah, Isha.
As we're like walking around like this area,
Yeah.
what kind of like courtships?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Okay, every single insect emergence event is like basically the time where they're finding each other. So, it's warm now. I've seen box elder bugs and western conifer seed bugs already. But like all the big river invertebrate emergences, the salmon fly, the caddisflies, they're flying, they only become adults for mating purposes because they live in the water mostly. And I'm trying to think of our best courtship displays in Montana. That's hard. I really am just like blown away by the sheer cycles of insects. So keeping your eye out every time you see like big aggregations. The woolly aphids, that's their sexual form when they have wings and they fly around and try to find each other. Yeah. And a lot of those insects overwinter as juveniles or eggs even. So.
I've seen Johnson's jumping spiders doing that dance with their hands up.
That's cool. Yeah. Is it true that we have a population of fireflies in Montana? So that's, someone tell me where that is. I gotta go find that. Yeah. They're mostly confined to the
YouTube channel.
Okay, cool. That's a really good courtship this way. Yeah.
Okay, so cup scientists made sense about that idea between natural selection and prey behavior and what's most adaptive in terms of survival, like our own special.
Yeah. So the cricket example that I was talking about.
Well, mostly just
Oh.
colors that would
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So I think that what you have touched on is like one of, still to this day, the most philosophical and debated topic of like evolutionary biology. So what is the line between sexual selection and natural selection? A lot of people would argue that sexual selection is actually housed under natural selection. At some level, if you don't live, it doesn't matter what you can evolve. ultimately, that probably dictates most of these things. A lot of sexually selected traits have other functions. So pigmentation, I didn't include, there's this dragonfly or damselfly, that the mademoiselle that flies like a butterfly. It's very beautiful. It has pigmented spots. And a lot of pigment on wings is also thought to be like a thing that can help regulate heat and thermal regulation. So they kind of go hand in hand, but yeah, I think pretty much every example of one of these things is shaped by both. Like, it is appealing to whoever it is intended for, and also can't be bad enough that they don't live to make it to the next day. That's a good question. Yeah, right.
Are there, so there's obviously like evolutionary traits that exist. Are there behavioral traits that are different between the same species in different areas? So things that are, I guess, learned.
Yeah, that's a good question. Again, I feel like probably. I'm trying to think of like examples just like from memory, where they do different behaviors depending on where they are, and specifically if they're learned. That is a good question. I may have to actually, I don't know off the top of my head. I know that there's variation, like just variation in traits. But I'm thinking that's more, not necessarily random, but like thinking of like a lot of songs sound different in a lot of places, and that insect songs. And is that just like a random attribute of that population, or if it's, I don't know. I have to get back to you on learning courtship behavior in insects. A lot of them have 1 season adult lifespans, so it's hard to know. Yeah. Sorry, that's not a satisfying answer. Yeah.
Can we come see you defend your thesis?
Yeah, and it's on stuff I know really well, so that'll be.
Is it public or private?
No, there's a public a talk. It'll probably be in, you're gonna have to wait a while. December of this year or January of next year. Yeah.
But you said you give other talks. So
Yes.
do you give other talks in town or only at conferences?
No, so I give them, we have to give talks once a year at the university. They are public, they're just on our research. My research talk is gonna be in April, I think April 1st. And yeah, so we give, especially through our program, we have to do a lot of talks. They are like a completely different format than this. Yeah, that's a good question.
Where can people go to find these?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm not online that much, but if you are really interested, that is my email, and also the University of Montana Ecology and Evolution Program webpage has like all of our seminar schedules on there. Thank you all. If you want to learn more about this, there are people that are smarter than me that have written really amazing books, and I did want to plug a lot of the inspiration that I have and people that inspire me. So Marlene wrote Sex on 6 Legs. Bitch is a really great book on female animal behavior. They're all popular science books, so fun reads. And then Doug's book, he has a really fun read on animal weapons.
Well, thank you, Sophie. That was a lot of fun. Just the next lecture will be on Tuesday, March 17th, and we'll be hearing from Michelle Tosha about the Montana Bumblebee Atlas, which is a community science project run by the Xerces Society. So thank you so much for coming this evening, and we'll see you in the next one.